All right, we are live for Who's Got Next, your Michigan football and basketball recruiting podcast here on Maize and Blue Review. We are starting the week off with Who's Got Next this week with Zach Libby, our recruiting editor over at Maize and Blue Review, mainly covering football recruiting while Davis handles the hoop side of recruiting. We're going to be talking about one athlete today, and that's really all we need to talk about. And Zach went on a little trip over the weekend, and he'll be telling us about that. And so we will dive in with some five-star talk here today on MBR. So, Zach, how are you doing? How was your trip? I know it was raining when you got to DC. You took a red eye, the whole nine. Tell us about your trip.
Well, first off, I'm doing great because the New York Knicks start preseason basketball tonight. And so now we got 6 months straight of the greatest team in the history of basketball on a nightly basis. So
They didn't get Donovan Mitchell, though.
What?
They didn't get Donovan Mitchell, though. You upset about that?
No, because we got RJ Barrett back, and he's going to be a future All-Star and a Hall of Famer. So why trade him,
I suppose so. So a decorated Knicks fan, Libby, you are. I, unfortunately, have been a Pistons fan my whole life. I love what they have coming back this year, though, but that's besides the point. You saw Nyckoles Harbor. Am I saying that right? I always ask you if I'm saying it right.
Like Nyckoles, yeah.
Nyckoles Harbor. Very unique way to spell what many believe is a common name. But Nyckoles Harbor, 5-star, a little bit of everything type of player. Athlete, I know, probably an edge rush at the next level. Likes to play some offense, too. Your second time seeing him, right?
Yeah, so, second time in about a month, yeah.
So in your second time seeing him, let's start from the macro. Let's kind of take this more surface level here. Let's just start with his official visit to Michigan that he took. This is our first chance hearing from him after that visit. You talked to him before it, so you got the preview of the visit. Now you got the recap of the visit. What did you learn from your conversation with Harbor about his trip to Michigan last week when he came here for their game against Maryland?
Yeah, so he really dove deep into how much of priority figure he felt on campus from the track program, from the football program, and the academic advisors. He literally said that Michigan rolled out the red carpet. For his second official visit after going to South Carolina the week prior, I think it was important for Michigan to do so. From that macro standpoint, I mean, this is not just a football recruitment. This is a two-sport athlete. So this was a all hands on deck from the track program, the football program, and really the academic advisors showing him the opportunities that he can dive into in medicine. He explained everything that, including conversations with Ron Bellamy, who's been the main area recruiter for him because Bellamy recruits the DMV. He talked about his individual meeting with Jim Harbaugh, which most every official visitor gets at least an hour or so with the head coach. All the coaches are really saying that they want him as a two-way player, offense and defense. We'll dive into that with each side. He really enjoyed just watching the game and meeting guys like Denard Robinson and like Devin Funchess, guys with NFL experience who personally went up to him and talked about like what Michigan can do to help him with that career jump to making millions and being that star. Another big thing that like wasn't, only you could have seen if you were at the game was like Harbor, instead of like for how like visitors set up. So like they go out of the tunnel and then they go around the sidelines. But with Harbor, he went straight to the 50-yard logo. So it was him and his parents, and they spent the entire pregame watching warm-ups, talking to the coaches, talking to the players right on that 50-yard line. And, for somebody who doesn't go to the big house often, seeing 110,000 people for the biggest game on Michigan's schedule at that point, like that's a big deal. And it's, that shock value when it comes to just that environment. It's just something that can't be replicated. Other things that included were like the academics, as we mentioned. We'll talk more about it, but he wants to go into medicine. His parents are very well educated. That's been a big factor in his recruitment, as he stated before. And then obviously talk with the track program staff. When he was not with the football program, he was with the track coaches, talking about the resources that he can receive while training in that sport, as well as getting closer with the relationships, including like the sprinters coach. So it was overall, he said it was a good visit. And, the reporters that were there were asking him like, what, how did Michigan, I guess, stack up in terms of favorites? And he really didn't have an answer to that. He said nobody's in front, nobody's behind. And with a top seven heading into the fall, 2 official visits, with 3 left, this could be a recruitment that could last until a traditional signing period. So we know that was a great visit. Obviously, official visits are always great, but in terms of how Michigan can really move the needle, we'll probably find out more once the winter starts and the season's over.
So let's break down Harbor's game here from a football perspective. As you mentioned, he plays both ways, and Michigan kind of sees him as that two-way guy. I think they like him more as a prolific type of edge guy in his future, but there's certainly an upside to play both sides, and it seems like an encouragement from him to want to play both sides. So just curious on your thoughts on that, if he'll end up playing both sides, if it's up to him. But let's start with the offense and what you see from him from an offensive standpoint, because we know him so well as a defensive recruit. I know he's listed as an athlete, but I think 9.9 out of 10 people see him as the edge rusher that maybe you and I also both see him as down the road. And excuse me to the folks at home, I'm battling a bit of a cold, so the voice is a little in and out. But talk about the offensive side of the ball for Harbor, what you see there, Libby, and where he can kind of take that at the next level.
So, I would say he has vocally expressed the desire to be an offensive player, but it's the assumption that he's leaning that way for a couple of reasons. Like, the first is obvious, that he can preserve his body better. He's not entrenched in the trenches. He won't get much physical contact if he's lined up as a wide receiver or even a flexed out tight end. And then, as obvious, like, it just comes down to the track aspect, because if he's an offensive player, then he can maintain his speed better on the track and not have to deal with lingering problems physically in terms of injuries. In terms of just him as a recruit, like, this might be, and I wrote this in a previous article that I wrote this morning, like, this is the most lethal weapon on any side of the ball that's a non-quarterback in the 23 class. So regardless if he's like dead set on playing offense, even though everyone else has said you'll be best suited on defense, like, schools will take him regardless and develop him right. I think for him to be such a rare commodity on the recruiting trail just speaks on behalf of having that option to be on both ways. So, yeah, we've seen him 2 times. We've seen him on offense. He plays both ways at Archbishop Carroll's High School in Washington, D.C. His offensive performance leaves, some to be desired. I don't think that's a knock on him, though. I just think he plays for a team where there's other talented wide receivers who want to be fed, and then there's a quarterback on the team who's better on his feet than with his arm. Last Saturday, he saw 1 target and 0 catches. I think the best thing about, and I've said about this before, I think the best thing about, him not seeing like 1 target is the fact that he doesn't really complain about it. Like, some kids with egos, you see them like wanting to be the focal point. You want them to have an impact. And, for a kid who's 6'5", 225 pounds, biggest kid on the field, most athletic kid on the field, smartest kid on the field, he just doesn't complain. He cares about his team. He cares about his overall success. And obviously, since Archbishop Carroll won, that meant more to him than anything that happened on the football field individually. But no, in terms of him as an offensive weapon, he lines up in line. So as a tight end, he can be on the outside, and then he can flex. He can be a flex. He spent a lot of his time last Saturday's game in line, did a lot of blocking, which was good to see, just to see how his aggression was, how his low center of gravity, his aggression in terms of just overpowering kids that are just levels below him in terms of physical shape, the balance that he possesses, and just his motor. Like, this kid is very conditioned from his track career. In terms of blocking, though, he's very willing to get underneath the pads of opposing edge rushers, defensive ends, outside linebackers, stay true to opening up holes and just being an impactor without having the ball in his hands. But I think the one thing that is really hindering him, or what's been the general consensus about him needing to be improving on offense, is natural route running and better pass catching. I think with route running, he really relies on his speed. Again, he's a 10.22 100-millimeter event track. That's his best record so far. He really utilizes his speed really to create separation from non-Power 5 worthy opposing defensive backs in secondary. Once he reaches that level, there's got to be more than just speed to create that separation, because you're going up against other kids who have just elite as agility as him. So that's going to be definitely a key development. And with Bellamy as his main recruiter, who coaches wide receivers, I think that's just a great fit for getting that chemistry now, which will lead to Bellamy leading him in the right direction to be an early impactor on offense as early as his freshman year. So again, laser speed, needs to be better at pass catching, needs to be better at route running, but his overall frame and his talent is just a foundation for what could be just an true upside on offense.
All right, let's shift things over to the defensive side of the ball, which is where, like you've mentioned, like we both mentioned, probably where he'll end up long term, thinking like, if he turns out to be an NFL guy, this is where I would say the consensus of everybody would say he's going to be at. I don't think he's going to play offense if he goes to the league. Could be very wrong. That's a long time from now. He might never end up there. But defensive side of the ball seems to be where he belongs as an edge rusher. The archetype, the prototypical body, the length he has, the wingspan, the raw strength. Anything else that stands out about him defensively? What separates him? What makes him an elite piece for a defense like Michigan's if they're able to land him?
Yeah, so I have this on my notes. His initial point of attack when the ball is snapped is undeniably grand. The twitch and explosiveness allows him to bend along the outside with ease, and just displays active hand movement in the length wingspan to not get trapped by a kick-out tackle or a pulling guard. He didn't have a sack against in the win last Saturday, but he really felt his presence and just being a disruptor in the backfield. Like, he's able to take on double teams and use a variety of pass rush moves to get to the quarterback, to get to the running back who bounces outside. Like, when a quarterback or a running back, finds the open hole and gets solid yardage, he finds like the perfect angle in order to get a tackle from behind. Like, as you said, this could be a kid who could be a day one selection as early as 2026, as early as top 5, top 10, even number 1. I guess why we say that Harbor might be leaning more on offense is obviously the wear and tear and his weight. Like, for 225 pounds, that's just not going to cut it at the Power 5 level when you're talking about prolific pass rushers. With his frame right now, he could easily gain at least 20 pounds, if not more. The problem with that is that even if you put on healthy weight or get him into a weight training program and just get him not have unwanted fat on him, regardless, having that weight gain is going to result in low track times. So if he cares that much about track, which he obviously does, I don't think he wants to gain more than 225 pounds. I mean, I could expect him to even drop a few pounds in order to lower his track times. It would be nice to imagine like a kid with his power, his talent to balloon to 250 pounds, let's say, and be that pass rushing tandem to pair alongside like Derek Moore or Etta or Collins Achiampon. Like that could be your future at the edge rushing position, but we may not know because he wants to stay at 225. And I think that would be perfect for his track career. But if everyone's saying you can make your millions in the NFL, why not take a chance and see what happens if you do get put on good weight? So again, as you said, this is his college ceiling is higher on defense, and I think his true calling will be on defense for as long as he retires.
So you touched a bit on track and what he does there and how serious he takes it and how much he's really invested in track, which kind of gets forgotten. I feel like a lot of people, I don't want to say people are simpletons or narrow-minded or anything. I just think it's the automatic habitual thought to have when there's an elite football player who also runs track. I think we all just kind of assume this guy's going to play football, right? But he clearly has a love for track, clearly wants to pursue it. The last real good track running football player for Michigan probably would have been Drake Johnson. I'm trying to think if there are any others that are escaping me. And if anyone wants to drop a comment to do so, feel free. There's been quite a bit of comments in here. I will get some going on the screen here in a moment. So we'll see this one here from Shadyville. I think he has DJ Metcalf. I think he means DK Metcalf. Type of potential. A little bit different. DK Metcalf plays receiver and runs a 4.3, but definitely has, I think, the body type in that he's just so far ahead of everyone at his age physically. Would that be a safe assumption? I know he's a bit underweight, but from a muscle mass perspective, do you see his physical attributes far ahead of his peers right now and in comparison to the rest of the class of 2023?
Oh no, he's a freak. Like this is why people consider him the most marketable non-quarterback in the 23 class. Like just his physical standpoint, like the opportunities you can have to market this kid is undeniable. Like if you remember, like DK used to have post photos of him in the weight room during college, and you just imagine like what you could have done with him at Ole Miss. The difference is that DK actually can catch the ball. Again, improvement in those areas, and maybe he could find his similarities to DK.
All right, well, we got to get out of here so Dennis Fithian can start his show, which is Afternoon Live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Michigan football with Dennis Fithian, which starts here in a couple of moments on the Maize and Blue Review YouTube channel. We'll end this off with contenders for Harbor, who Michigan is up against in that race, and where you see them finishing at the time of writing. And before we move on to that, some folks are saying Denard ran track, and I know that, but Drake Johnson was well after Denard, folks. Come on now. Give me a break. But if you guys don't remember Drake Johnson, he's the one who got hit by a forklift. I don't know if anyone remembers that. That was quite the story. But that's the last one I remember. But, of course, Denard was unbelievable at track. So before we shift over to Dennis's show, Zach, quickly, the contenders for Nyckoles Harbor and where you see them finishing out at with him.
So he has 3 more remaining official visits. Like I said, LSU, Miami, Maryland, Georgia, USC could all potentially get one. The differences in terms of how Michigan has an advantage is obviously academics. Just a little bit on that. He's a 4.0 student, wants to be a surgeon when he grows up. Michigan has the number 6 surgery specialist school in the country. In terms of the other schools, obviously South Carolina is hitting it pretty hard with the recruitment, has great relationships with the coaches. LSU is expected to get one as well, and possibly Maryland, Miami, and the rest. So, like we said, I think his quote of saying nobody's behind and no one's in front is compelling heading into mid-halfway point of August. So we won't know more about front runners and people behind in pole position probably later after the season.
To your point, John Stoops, Ryan Day wouldn't last a day in Downriver for anybody who understands that reference. All right, that was our talk with Zach Libby for the week, talking football recruiting. We focused on Nyckoles Harbor this week and got a lot of valuable information there. Make sure you guys follow us on social media, Twitter at Michigan Rivals, Instagram and TikTok, Maize Blue Review. No and in there, just Maize Blue Review. You're about to hear from Dennis Fithian here for Good Afternoon Michigan Football. So make sure you guys tune in, lock in, and ask tons of questions. I see a lot of football-centric team questions on here on our YouTube comments. Make sure you keep those answers and save them for Dennis. He is available to answer those on his show. More of a recruiting show here today. But make sure you tune in on Thursday for Hail to the Podcast with Josh Henschke and myself. And then, of course, game day on Saturday at Indiana. We will be there. I will be there. Can't wait. So talk to you guys then. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday afternoon. Or I'm sorry. Is it Tuesday? I forget what day it is. Yes, your Tuesday afternoon.